Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing very well and having a great day so far whenever you get round to tuning in to this episode, which in this episode today, we are going to go through 5 more tips for your first prep. And honestly, not even for your first prep. I would say that these are just helpful tips for your prep, regardless of if it's your first, second, third, 10th prep. It doesn't matter. I think they're always really, really helpful things to take on board. I actually got a lot of really nice feedback from the other episode that I did. And thank you so much to anyone that listened to that episode. I hope you found it helpful. And as always, as with any of the episodes, I'm always so grateful for anyone who watches, listens, enjoys them. But based on that, I'm going to do some additional tips in this episode. And honestly, I'll probably just keep adding to this. If I keep thinking of more tips, more feedback, things more specific to show day, which is actually something I'm going to do next, is like show day specific tips and things you can take on board. But in this one, we're just going to go through a few more additional things that I feel as though will be helpful for you to take into your prep. So if you're starting your prep, you're coaching someone through a prep, whatever it may be, these will hopefully be helpful things to take on board. And I'm going to try and do something very different and actually be quite concise with this episode, because they're important points I want you to take on board. And I don't want you to feel like you're kind of switching off at any point, because I'd rather you actually are able to listen to all of the things. So I might not go into them like fully in depth too much, but if anyone's got any questions off the back of these, as always, you're always welcome to pop me a message, a DM, anything like that. I'm always happy to chat through different things. So tip number 1 is going to be to involve yourself in non-bodybuilding related tasks on a regular basis. And this is something that you might think, well, that's quite obvious. Like, I'm not just going to be doing bodybuilding all the time. But it is really, really easy when you get into a prep or even a diet phase and you start to think, okay, my whole life is bodybuilding. Like, this is everything that I'm doing now. Everything has to be like 100% full on. And you'll probably have heard me at like different points talk about like having a dimmer switch anyway when it comes to bodybuilding. Sometimes that dimmer switch will be all the way up, sometimes it'll be down a little bit, sometimes it'll be in the middle point, but it's really important to have that at all times, and especially in a prep. I think it's even more so important that you don't just let bodybuilding completely consume your everyday, because it's very easy for that to be the case, whether your job's in bodybuilding or not. You can still very much have your whole day centered around, eating your meals, prepping your meals, training, doing your steps, doing your cardio, and not actually giving really time to think about or do anything else. And the problem that I find with this is, not only do you potentially put yourself in a position where you can start to dislike doing the things that you do, but you also just have no switch off. Like, you have no switch off, and it's very likely that when you're in a prep, and also when like you're hungry, you're going to be tired at points. If all you're doing is thinking about the next bodybuilding related thing you've got to do, like for example, thinking, oh, I've got to do steps, or I'm quite hungry now, when's my next meal? Actually keeping yourself busy and doing things that are not just your bodybuilding tasks is going to be really, really, really helpful in so many different ways. So firstly, just for your enjoyment of bodybuilding, but also to make the prep like genuinely kind of easier, because you're not making things so difficult. Like, honestly, the hardest time I ever had in my prep was when I didn't have anything going on. Like, everyone always says, oh, being busy is like a bad thing. Being busy is a good thing. It's actually a really good thing with bodybuilding. And this is what I found, because like, especially in a prep, it kind of makes the time fly quicker. It makes you less food focused. You're also probably going to be less focused on like your energy being low or whatever it is, because you're just kind of like, you're busy, you're productive, you're doing things. And the worst time is when you actually have nothing to do. Like, personally, I couldn't think of anything worse than being a sponsored like like bodybuilder, which you see like obviously in very rare occasions where they don't do anything other than bodybuild, like I would go insane. I would actually lose the plot if I had nothing to do. And I've been there, you know, like not necessarily a sponsored bodybuilder, but I was in sort of like my summer break from uni, and I also didn't do anything outside of bodybuilding because I felt like I couldn't, and it was COVID, which obviously didn't help. But as a result, I was like always thinking about what I need to eat and when's my next meal, and it made it very, very difficult. And I was also then spending time like just thinking about prep, just thinking about my physique and how far out is the show, and you spend time then like on Instagram and doing things that aren't kind of good for you. So one, like keeping busy is a good thing, but actually doing things, like I said, that are outside of bodybuilding is also good. So whether that be actually specific occasions, there is so much that you can do that does not involve food. You know, it doesn't involve food, it doesn't involve drinking. And, you know, also like you don't have to be involved in those things either. Like you can still go to weddings, you can still go to events with family or friends or whatever it may be. You can go on holiday, you know, you can go on holiday, you can do things if like that's part of your plan, and still be adherent to your meals, still be adherent to your training, and still have a nice time. Like that's okay, and that's actually quite good to do. I mean, even one of my clients, Beth, she actually went away to Spain with her friend last year, and like they went out for dinner every night, and she just either took her meal with her or she could just get them to cook her a chicken breast, and she would just sit and eat that with her friends and be out. And you know, it played absolutely no negative role in her bodybuilding journey. If anything, it was just positive for her to have a break from her usual environment. So, you know, don't feel like you can't involve yourself in those specific kind of events. I think that once you get to, probably it's different for everyone, but usually like 6 weeks out or below, you just don't want to be doing those things, because that's where your body is obviously going to be a bit more like responsive to changes, whether that be changed in your daily routine. The look's going to be a little bit more sensitive to that, and you'll probably just be ultimately at a point where energy's a bit lower. You want to keep things nice and simple. And as a result, the thought of kind of like going out and doing big things is maybe not going to cross your mind as something that's enjoyable. But that's not to say that you can't still do things that are not bodybuilding related. And this is something that I think you should have across your whole prep, is like having little things, whether it's like going for a walk with friends or family or going to the cinema. This is one of my favorite things to do at all points, especially when you're like dieting or in prep. It's such a great thing to do because you can go to the cinema, you really like switch off and immerse yourself in something else for like a couple of hours. You can take your food, you can have a Pepsi Max, which is always a nice treat, or you can have a coffee. And it's just a really, really nice switch off. So that's kind of one of the things. Obviously so many other things you could do. You could go bowling, you could go play mini golf. Like there are literally so many things that you can do that do not involve food or massive amounts of expenditure. And it's really important that you have those things in. So when you can do them on a rest day, on a weekend, or whatever it is, like do them, please, because I think it's important to also show the people around you that bodybuilding isn't entirely consuming, and it's also important for you to still like live life while you're on prep. Like that's okay, and that's fine. So please make sure that you have those things in your setup where possible. And secondly, like leading on from that, so this is a second point, and I've kind of touched on this with the fact that being busy is actually helpful, is, you know, you can use prep to your advantage as well, to be really productive, because again, it doesn't take away from everything, whether you have, you know, goals in work, or you have, you know, business related goals or other things that you want to do. Like if anything, I think that bodybuilding and prep specifically is a great time where you can actually really work on those things. And this is what I've always found, is when I'm dieting, when I'm prepping, like I actually have the ability to be way more productive because my routine is so much better, because you're often like not feeling as lethargic. You don't feel sluggish like you do in the off season. When you're leaner and when you're kind of also in a routine because of your prep tasks, you have more time to do other things. I find that I'm more creative, you know, and this is generally where you can still keep your work at a really good quality and do more things. So if you are thinking about, oh, you want to grow your business, or you have like a big year at work and you're worried that this is going to take away from it. It really won't. It really won't unless you think that it will. And like I said, if anything, it can actually really be used as an advantage to make that year even more productive. So particularly like when it comes to like a coaching side of things, of course, it's very beneficial, but in so many different sectors of work. So don't be kind of like overly worried on that front. I think you get a huge amount of clarity as well in a prep, in the sense that you realize how much you can do, because you start to fit so much into your days. You're like, wow, I can do so much more. And that's a really good benefit you can take into the prep and also out of the prep as well. So definitely use that as kind of like a learning opportunity and something to honestly just make the most of. As I mentioned, even with the, going out and doing different things, there will become a point where you have to prioritize your energy consumption, and where you will actually just focus your energy, because there will be less of it. But that's really in the latter stages, so for the most part, there's only really so many like positive opportunities that you can kind of get away from that. Now, the next thing that I'm going to move on to, because those two tips were kind of like very similar to one another, and this is going to go in a slightly different direction. So this is actually one of the most important things that you can take into your prep. So if you're about to start your prep, you're in your prep, whatever it may be, I mean, it's the same in off season as well, but this is a more common issue in prep, is that you need to be extremely honest with the feedback that you give your coach. Like, you might think, well, that's so obvious. Obviously I do. But a lot of athletes and a lot of clients feel like not that they don't want to be honest in the sense that they will like lie about, not adhering or things like that. I mean, more so not being honest with, struggles, like not being honest with finding things difficult, or, having an issue or whatever it may be. And this is something that I see very commonly with bodybuilders, because so many of us are very much like of this mindset of, we'll do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes. I'll suffer. You really view prep as like a time for like suffering. Like, I'm ready to suffer. But it's not just about suffering. It's actually really harmful for you to just say, I feel good all the time, and expect to feel like shit all the time, when you actually don't need to feel like that. And you also don't feel good. Like, it's not good for you to do that. And it's really, really important during a prep that you are very honest with your coach in terms of how you are dealing with things. If you're feeling good, if you're not feeling good, because that allows them to make the best decisions for you in terms of the prep, with how they push you, how they don't push you. Because if you go to your coach and you check in that day and you're like, you know what, I feel pretty fucked. Like, I'm not feeling great. I feel really tired. My session performance has taken a massive dip. I really struggled to get through my cardio this morning more than usual. I felt very draggy. My legs felt very heavy during my steps. There's going to be like two outcomes that can potentially come from this. It's either one, and this will be sometimes the case, is your coach will say, look, I know you feel like this right now, but this is a side effect at the moment of this pushing phase, or whatever it may be. Like, we got to crack on. We got to get through a little bit of a stint like this. You're going to be absolutely fine. So sometimes you will be told, like, this is normal to feel like that. And sometimes it's really important for you to even get the kind of like validation and like the clarification that, okay, like, I feel a bit shit, but I'm going to feel a bit shit at points, and it's okay. And I need to crack on because this is the job and the task at hand. So sometimes you will be told that, but other times that feedback is very, very, very valuable and important. Because there's like two situations here. So say you were to check in and you actually feel like shit, but you say you feel fine. Okay. Your coach is going to take that most likely as an opportunity of like, oh, okay, we just need to push her harder, or push him harder, because say you're at a point where like your body weight maybe isn't like moving as rapid as it needs to, or the visuals and the look aren't improving. They might think, oh, okay, well, they're feeling good, so we can just push them a bit harder. Like, they're good to take it. And then what happens is if you then get pushed when you're not in a place where you're ready to get pushed, your stress is going to get higher, you're going to accumulate more fatigue, and then you're going to be even less responsive and you're just being pushed into a hole. Whereas what you really need in those situations is to be honest with how you're feeling and how you're getting on, because the coach is going to be able to then go, okay, like they're not seeing any movement, but they're also feeling absolutely mashed. Okay, this is a sign that they're just really fatigued. We need to drop this off, and then we'll be responsive to fat loss again. And that's probably then a case of your coach being able to go, right, we actually need to do less. So we're going to have, a day, a couple of days where we actually pull your cardio out. We're going to have a little bit more food in, and then we'll feel refreshed to push you on after that, and then we'll be nice and responsive again. And that would be the better thing to do. So it's very, very, very important that your coach can make those right decisions for you. Don't be afraid of being honest, and don't think that that makes you like not a good bodybuilder for being honest. It actually makes you a very good bodybuilder for being able to understand how your body feels. There's a huge difference between giving honest feedback and just like complaining. Because I've had this so many times from clients where they'll say, Loz, I just want you to know, like, I'm not complaining. I just feel really tired. I'm like, it's okay. Like, I know that you're not complaining. It's all right to tell me that you're like feeling a bit rough. It's important for you to tell me that, or whatever it may be. So, there is obviously sometimes a point where you'll be told like, okay, maybe you are thinking negatively, but it's very rare. Like if you are just giving honest feedback, that is honest feedback. That is all it is. And it's really important to give that. So please make sure that, when you're doing your check-ins, you're doing your updates, you are giving, as much information as is, going to be really helpful throughout that process as well. So moving on from that to the next tip, which is obviously kind of related to like making decisions in prep as well, is that more is not better. And sometimes it will be helpful, but more often than not, more is not always better. So when you are talking to your coach, or when you're trying to understand your coach's decisions, there will probably be some points where you think, okay, like I need to drop all my food and I need to do so much more cardio and I need to do so much more steps and my rate of loss needs to be faster, and I need to be leaner, or whatever it may be. And it's very easy to fall into that trap, and most people will fall into that trap. And it's a huge reason why most people don't self-coach as well, because you would just be like, okay, I can do more. And it's that same mindset I just went through as well, with like, we kind of want to struggle. As crazy as it sounds, most bodybuilders are a little bit crazy. We like struggling. We like to face challenge and face difficulty, but it's not always necessary, and it's often not good, and it's not productive for the look. Because remember, like, getting on stage is not about getting on stage as lean and as like fatigued and smashed as possible. That's not the goal, like there's some categories like, bodybuilding, really just bodybuilding. I mean, women's physique potentially, where, like you need to be getting like very, very lean. And it is like, to an extent, there's a huge part of condition. But even with condition, it's not about just dieting away to get leaner and leaner and leaner and leaner, because there is always a balance to be had when it comes to displaying a level of condition, but displaying a level of condition that is going to display the amount of muscle and the amount of muscle maturity that you have in the best way possible. And also, when it comes to getting to that, you also have to manage it at a rate that is still going to ensure that the look is not extremely fatigued, that you have not actually lost muscle, you've maintained as much muscle as possible, and that you also then haven't just lost like massive amounts of like fullness, strengths to your physique that are really important. And that will also have to be managed very differently based on certain individuals, because like some people will be very lean in certain body parts, and as a result they have to try and manage the like fullness of that throughout prep. Some people will have more muscle maturity than others. As a result, the degree of condition that each person will have to display their strongest physique will be different. So it's always about displaying your strongest physique to display all of the criteria that is needed for your specific class on the day. More is not better. And that's really, really important to remember, especially if you are competing in disciplines that do have more specific criteria: men's physique, bikini, figure, physique, classic even, like there's very important things that you have to take into consideration when it comes to the level of conditioning, the shape, things that you need to be able to display in your physique, is really, really, really important. And I think you have to remember that your coach is always going to have that in mind as well, when they're planning out your prep or when they're making decisions. It's not just, okay, we drop everything right now. They will have mapped out, your rate of loss, how your look needs to be when you're on stage or whatever it is. So you're going to have massive prep goggles on by the time it comes to the end. And, you'll all have probably heard the term prep goggles. And it's just when, you get to that point where you cannot tell what is usually going on. And more often than not, whenever you come away from the prep, you're like, oh, wow, like, I actually looked quite good there, and I was actually really lean, and I was where I needed to be. But in the moment, you just want more and more and more, because you've also been in the pursuit of more and more. And it can become very difficult when you also get to the latter stages, when you're ready, you're there. And this happens all the time, from like regionals to finals, or from qualifiers to further shows, where people will look bang on the money. They'll be like bang on. They look perfect for the class. Their physique looks amazing. And then they go and lose another 5 pounds before the finals because they think they need to push more. And it's not always better, and me and AJ learned that in AJ's last prep as well, where, like, to be fair, the thing with with AJ and like even with myself is we always want to trial things out on ourselves as coaches, because we are able to then learn things that we either do or don't want our clients to kind of do. We'd rather use ourselves as guinea pig. But like when AJ did the finals in 21, he like pushed more going into Budapest. Was it Budapest? No, Bucharest. And he actually looked probably better at the finals when he was a bit fuller and had more balance and flow to his physique, and other areas just flattened off a bit more. But you only learn that from, like, I suppose, learning that at points. And I know if you go to a show and you win or you place really well, and you get told like this is a good look, or even your coach goes like this is a good look for the category, this is where you need to be, this is your most competitive, you're probably just going to need to hold there. There's not going to be many changes. It will be making sure that they can, keep your physique in that strong point as best as possible without necessarily chasing for more condition, or maybe even not chasing for more fullness. It's just holding you in that spot. So making sure to remember that is very important. Now, the last thing that I'm going to come on to then in today's episode is going to be to be very mindful of your social media usage. So I already touched upon this kind of in the context of like food focus, I believe, and things like that. But today I mean it more so in the context of the actual show and the actual competition, and obviously when it comes to physique analysis as well, because I think everyone has been there, everyone has done it. Off-season prep doesn't really matter, where you will compare to maybe other people who are doing the same class, the same show, or whatever it may be, and you can very easily kind of fall down into a trap of just like comparing to others and spending your whole prep focusing on what other people are doing and focusing on how others look. And I've seen it so many times where people will look at others on Instagram and like instantly count themselves out, like in the sense that they'll be like, oh, they're doing this show, like I'll never win, kind of thing. And then they go, and then sometimes they beat them, like it tells you very little. Like looking at other competitors, judging yourselves against them, trying to pay attention to what they're doing, like actually ask yourself how much that's benefiting you in your prep. Because remember, when we touched in the last episode, we spoke about what your number one priority is in prep, and it's to make sure that you have an enjoyable experience of a prep for yourself. You do something you've never done, you get yourself into the best shape that you've ever been in, and you enjoy that process as much as possible. Comparing to somebody else's process is really pointless, particularly like if you are a first time competitor as well. Like honestly, when you get probably further into your journey, you will have some awareness of other competition because you're then maybe trying to, win shows, or you want to attain a certain title or whatever it may be, like later down the line. And maybe then you have to look at, oh, okay, I have a weakness here compared to, X or whatever it may be. But especially in like your early years, and to be honest, I always think this is important, like you can only be the strongest version of yourself, and especially in your first prep, like you just got to focus on that. If you start to focus on others, what does that do? It drains your energy. It's draining like this little like energy tank that you have of what you have available in the day, and you're just like draining away like more of this energy to go to focusing on others. What are other people doing? This is bringing me down, rather than like using that energy to like, okay, I'm going to use as much of my own energy to do all of my tasks, focus on being my best self, like which is going to give you the better situation. You know that the one way you focus on yourself is going to always give you the better outcome and the better experience. But like it's not a bad thing to want to see who's like doing a show, and to sometimes like see others that they're in the show and are going to be there on the day is nice, and it's sometimes fun. And I think it's good to remember that you can like enjoy being on stage with like people that or friends or whatever it may be. That actually makes it a really nice experience. And we're all just there to do our best. And I think that being supportive of others who have also worked extremely hard is such a wonderful thing to be able to share. But definitely don't use it as a means of comparison, especially because Instagram, TikTok, whatever it may be that you're like seeing other competitors on, like it's never a true reflection of what that person looks like on stage. It doesn't mean anything in bodybuilding. Like, and this is something you always have to remember, is that the only thing that actually matters in competitive bodybuilding is how you look on stage, in the stage lights, with the stage backdrop, on the day, with your tan on, with your bikini on, with your heels on, if you've got heels on, and stood next to other people. That is the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter how you look in your check-ins at home. It doesn't matter how you look in epic gym lighting or in some crazy like half natty lighting. Like it doesn't matter. Or what your delt pump looks like. It's like, what does your whole physique look like on stage on that day compared to other people, based on the criteria and based on the judges that are sat in front of you. So worrying about things that are like completely irrelevant. And I'm going to tell you, honestly right now, and I know so many people that have done this as well. I know AJ's done this at points. It's like, I actually have had like screenshots of like my check-in, and I have compared them to like somebody else's check-in, like in the past, like years ago. I'm talking like 2019, 2020, like before that prep, in that prep. Like, why would I do that? Like, why would I do that? Because it tells me nothing. It tells me absolutely nothing. And it means absolutely nothing. Like, it's such a silly comparison to make. And it gives you nothing outside of that, So don't fall for those mistakes, because I promise you they're not worth it. And they're not necessarily, if you find yourself going down that little rabbit hole on Instagram, just be like, I don't need to do this to myself right now, and you can actually come away from it. It's normal that you'll probably fall into it a little bit, but just have that awareness, and hopefully listening to this will give you that little bit of awareness, so that, like I say, it's not one of those things that kind of pulls away from your energy massively. But those are all the things I wanted to go through today. Just a nice, like I said, quick, simple episode, to just give you a few sort of further additional tips. I hope it's been helpful as always. And of course, if anyone has any like suggestions or specific things they want me to talk about, more so prep relating, if I continue to do these episodes, do definitely let me know, because I want to address the things that are going to be helpful for you. These are often a lot of the things that I obviously wish that I knew, but prep is a completely personal experience. So you might have certain things that you're worried about, or you struggle with, and I'd love to be able to go through those. So if there is anything, let me know. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening as always. Please like, subscribe, share, follow, all that amazing stuff. Definitely, if you listen to the episode, share it and tag me on Instagram, because it's always really nice to see that you are listening. Yeah, thank you so much, guys, and I'll be back with another episode next week.